Hello guys! Back in the day, when rubber boots were still made of wood, a monk named Gregor Mendel worked in a monastery garden. In the garden, he crossed peas and in doing so, learned about heredity. His discoveries were groundbreaking and pushed Mendel's career quite nicely. That's why you have to deal with this stuff now. In today's lesson, we'll go over the most important parts of heredity. When Gregor worked with garden pea plants, he investigated the first basic concept of heredity: simple inheritance. In simple inheritance, a trait is determined by a single gene. Just remember, a gene is a hereditary characteristic. More specifically, it is the portion of a chromosome that is responsible for the formation of a trait or character. Two examples of simple inheritance are, of course, number 1, the color of a pea plant. Number 2, human blood type. If you're confused about that, check out the video about genes and alleles again. So, this trait is also called phenotype. Phenotype refers to what you can see. The phenotype is determined by the genotype. Genotype is simply the name for the genes you have. Moving on, the 3 Mendelian laws do not apply to all organisms, but only to diploid organisms with haploid germ cells. Let me guess, you just asked yourself, what the gardener does diploid mean? Actually, it's quite easy. There are 2 sets of chromosomes, which are often abbreviated as 2N. Since we are all almost fluent in ancient Greek, the word haploid is self-explanatory. Haplous means simple, so there is always one set of chromosomes. This is abbreviated as N. Okay, Mendel's rules apply to diploid organisms with haploid germ cells. Germ cell is another technical term for sex cell, which carries the hereditary information. After fertilization, they are diploid again. Almost all animals, including humans and most plants, are diploid organisms. Human beings have 23 chromosome pairs. That makes 46 chromosomes. 1 chromosome set is from mommy, 1 from daddy. The one exception are the sex chromosomes. Men have an X and a relatively small Y chromosome. Women, on the other hand, have a copy of their X chromosome, so their sex chromosomes are XX. Remember, chromosomes occur in pairs, so the same gene exists twice. That doesn't mean that the gene must contain the same information. These different or alternate forms of a gene are called alleles. For example, there are alleles for hair color, blood type, and other interesting things like the ability to roll your tongue. Most of you are probably now sitting in front of the screen trying to roll your tongue. Can you? So, alleles have 2 options. Either they both contain the same information, or they don't. If you have 2 identical alleles, it is called homozygous. But if they are different, it is called heterozygous. Let us now assume that we have a heterozygous trait. That means if we have a dominant-recessive inheritance where one feature suppresses the other, the stronger trait that is expressed is called dominant, while the suppressed or not expressed trait is called recessive trait. That's where, surprise, the name for the dominant-recessive inheritance comes from. So far so good. Let's not let that studying go to waste. Now we'll take a look at Mendel's first test. He first crossed pea plants with green seeds with pea plants with yellow seeds. The offspring only had yellow seeds. As a monk, Mendel could have described it as godly. But the old monk didn't. He found that the characteristics of the yellow seeds were the dominant ones, while the green seeds were recessive and therefore did not show up among the pea children. To review, this is called dominant-recessive inheritance. Further details can be found in the video about the first Mendelian law. Don't forget, dominant features are represented by a capital letter. For example, a capital R for flower colors represent a dominant allele for red flowers. The recessive alleles are represented with a lowercase letter. Here, a small w is used because the recessive flower color is white. The upper and lowercase letters are especially evident on this Mendel anniversary stamp. They made it easy here and used a lowercase r for the alleles of the white recessive trait. In addition to this inheritance, there is also the intermediate and the codominant inheritance. In the case of a heterozygous trait, a mixed form is obtained from both traits. For example, this can be found in the miracle flower, where mixing white and red makes pink. In intermediate inheritance, also called incomplete dominance, both alleles are equally responsible for the expression of the characteristic. No single allele is more dominant. Last but not least, the codominant inheritance. In this case, both features occur parallel, without a mixed form. This inheritance type can be found in human blood types. Here, both features are dominant and can occur side by side. Therefore, only capital letters are used. So that wraps up the lesson on Mendel's laws of inheritance. Let's summarize the most important info. Simple inheritance is determined by only a single gene. In human cells, there are 2 sets of each chromosome. Genotype is singular only in germ cells. Alleles are the variations of a gene. If 2 identical alleles are present in the genome, they are called homozygous. If they are different alleles, they are called heterozygous. A single dominant feature prevails against a recessive feature and is labeled with capital letters. In a dominant-recessive inheritance, a single characteristic is established. In an intermediate inheritance, a mixed form of both features is formed. For example, the alleles for the flower colors red and white together make pink. In the case of the codominant inheritance, both features occur parallel, like in human blood types. The genotype is the genetic makeup or the sum of all genes transmitted from parent to offspring. Last but not least, the phenotype is the appearance resulting from the genotype, for example, the flower color. That's enough for now. You can find more about the various hereditary passages and further subject-related problems in the video about the first Mendelian law, the law of segregation. See you then!